If you think you've seen everything inside America's toughest prisons, think again. Because what you're about to hear was never supposed to leave those walls. So, before we dive in, hit subscribe because this one, is the kind that'll make you double-check your locks tonight. The sirens at Florence ADX cut through the stillness of the Colorado desert like the scream of a dying machine. 2:47 a.m., August 12th. A lockdown siren that hadn't gone off in almost 6 years. Guards pour down the narrow concrete corridors, cell doors sealed, security lights flashing red. Inside one of those steel cages sat a man who, according to prison records, hadn't spoken to anyone in over 1,000 days. His name was Marcus Kane. To the guards, he was inmate number 48219. To everyone else who'd ever crossed him, he was a ghost, a man who could manipulate the system better than the system could control him. Kane was serving 3 life sentences without parole. He'd been convicted in 2009 for orchestrating a multi-state bank fraud operation that spiraled into a double homicide. But what made Kane infamous wasn't the crime. It was what happened after he got locked up. Every warden that came through ADX called him the same thing, a man who doesn't need freedom to escape. When the lockdown began that night, Officer Delgado was the first to notice the anomaly. Kane's surveillance feed, every cell in ADX is under 24-hour visual monitoring, was static. Pure white snow across the screen. Delgado rebooted the system. Still static. He tried the backup feed. Static again. Then he saw it. The timestamp on the monitor had stopped exactly at 2:12 a.m., 25 minutes before the alarms. That shouldn't have been possible. Not at ADX. The control center initiated a manual override. Doors slammed shut, cameras rebooted, and suddenly Kane's cell feed flickered back on. He was sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor, his hands on his knees, eyes open, but something about his face was different. Calm, deliberate, like he was waiting for the guards to arrive. When the tactical team burst in, Kane didn't move. He looked at them and said, quietly, "You're already too late." The words sent a chill through the room. They shackled him, dragged him out, and began the standard cell inspection, a routine procedure after any system interference. But what they found behind the vent near his bed didn't look routine at all. Folded inside a hollowed-out section of the wall was a handwritten diagram, a perfect layout of the entire ADX control system. Every camera, every blind spot, every access code, color-coded and precise. But here's the part that turned the case from bizarre to impossible. The codes were current. Updated within the last 2 months. No inmate had access to that kind of information. When federal investigators arrived the next morning, they realized they were facing something the Bureau had never seen before. Kane wasn't just manipulating people, he was manipulating the prison itself. Somehow, he had reached beyond those concrete walls and gotten access to real-time data. The warden, a seasoned official named Robert Holloway, ordered a full audit of every correctional officer's login credentials. Over 100 staff members were screened for leaks, bribes, or blackmail. Nothing. Clean records across the board. Then the strange things began happening. Emails started appearing in the warden's inbox, encrypted and signed, time-stamped from within the prison's own internal network. The messages contained fragments of conversations that only the warden had had in private. And each email ended the same way. You build a system to hold monsters. But what if the monster built the system? Meanwhile, Kane remained silent. For 3 days straight, he refused to eat, drink, or respond. On the 4th day, when FBI's Special Agent Dana Reeves entered his cell, he finally spoke. "You know what the problem with control is, Agent Reeves?" he said, his voice steady. "It gives people the illusion of safety. But real control is invisible." Reeves, a former cybercrimes investigator, suspected Kane had found a way to infiltrate ADX's internal computer systems. But when the forensics team examined his cell, there were no devices, no wires, no outside communication. Just a stack of legal paperwork, a few old law books, and a hand-drawn chessboard scratched into the floor. Every inmate has limited mail access. Letters are scanned and monitored. But one small irregularity stood out. Kane had been corresponding with a volunteer chaplain for nearly 6 months. The letters were clean, reviewed, and stamped approved. But when analysts ran a pattern scan on the phrasing, they found something hidden inside, micro-coded data embedded through the first letters of every paragraph. It spelled out a sequence of numbers, hexadecimal values, that, when decrypted, matched the encryption key for ADX's remote monitoring system. In other words, Kane had been hiding data inside prayers. Reeves confronted the chaplain. The man swore he'd never noticed anything unusual. He thought Kane's letters were genuine confessions, deeply spiritual reflections. But when agents checked his computer, they found evidence that someone had accessed the ADX staff network using his credentials at odd hours of the night. The chaplain insisted he'd been home during those times. He lived 40 miles away. So, if he hadn't logged in, who had? Reeves went back to Kane's cell the next morning, determined to break him. "Tell me how you did it," she demanded. "You're in isolation 23 hours a day. You don't have a computer. You don't even have a phone." Kane leaned forward, eyes glinting with that calm, unnerving confidence. "Agent Reeves," he said softly, "do you really think I need to touch a computer to use one?" That's when the lights flickered. Across the control room monitors, one by one, every feed from cell block D went dark, until the last camera showed Kane staring directly into it, a faint smile on his face. Then, without warning, the entire system crashed. And when the backup generator kicked in 15 seconds later, Marcus Kane was gone. If you're still here after Chapter 1, you already know this isn't your average prison story. Before we go deeper into how Marcus Kane vanished from the most secure prison in America, do one thing. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because this chapter exposes what really happens when a prison built to contain evil becomes part of the plan. The moment the lights came back on, chaos swallowed the ADX control center. Every alarm blared at once, red lights pulsing like veins through concrete. The monitors that once showed cell after cell of motionless men were now black, dead feeds, every one of them. Warden Holloway barked orders into his radio, his voice steady, but laced with disbelief. No inmate had ever escaped from ADX Florence. Not one. And yet, according to the system, Marcus Kane no longer existed. His ID tag was offline, his location sensors blank. The biometric trackers on his wrist restraint read, Error 404. For the first time in the facility's 30-year history, a prisoner had vanished without opening a single door. Agent Dana Reeves arrived minutes later, her black SUV kicking up desert dust under the floodlights. She walked into the control room, took one look at the blank screens, and said quietly, "He planned this months ago." The warden frowned. "Impossible. You can't just disappear from ADX." Reeves didn't answer. She was staring at a single screen that had flickered back on. It was a feed from the prison library, long abandoned at that hour, showing a single open book lying on the floor. The title glinted in the dim light, The Art of Deception. The team swept through the cell blocks, room by room, door by door. Kane was nowhere. Not in the ventilation shafts. Not in the laundry tunnels. Not in any camera blind spots. The prison was sealed, 37 steel doors between his cell and the nearest exit. But at 3:26 a.m., one of the motion sensors in the sublevel maintenance corridor registered a single footstep. Just one. When the guards arrived, they found a utility hatch unscrewed, and inside it, a crumpled photograph. It showed the ADX control room. The same control room they were standing in, and scrawled across the bottom in pencil were 3 words. "You're looking wrong." Reeves studied the photo for hours. Something about it felt intentional, like Kane had left it as part of a game. She ordered the tech team to analyze every piece of data from the previous week, door logs, ventilation pressure, energy fluctuations, even the rhythm of the fluorescent lights. At 7:42 a.m., they found the first real clue. 3 nights earlier, there had been a 4-minute blackout in the solitary wing, short enough to go unnoticed by staff. During that window, the power had been rerouted through a backup grid connected to the prison's water filtration system. When engineers checked the access logs, they found a single override command entered from a terminal registered to the chaplain's office. The same terminal tied to Kane's coded prayer letters. Reeves followed the trail to the chaplain himself, Father Joseph Heller, now under 24-hour watch. He looked exhausted, shaking as he sat under interrogation lights. "I didn't help him escape," he whispered. "I swear it." He said he wanted to confess, said he was ready to change. Reeves leaned forward. "Then why did he send you those letters? Why hide system codes inside scripture?" Tears welled in Heller's eyes. "Because I thought I could save him." He slid something across the table, an envelope with a faint prison seal. "He sent me this the night before the blackout. I didn't open it until today." Inside was a single page, handwritten in perfect block letters. "A prison is just a reflection of those who build it." On the back, a drawing, a circular symbol that matched the ventilation layout of ADX. Except one vent line connected to a section that shouldn't exist. A tunnel. Reeves drove straight to the maintenance schematics. And there it was, a narrow emergency pipeline sealed off in 1999 after a construction accident. It ran beneath cell block D, directly under Kane's unit, and re-emerged nearly 500 yards outside the outer fence, ending in an old drainage ditch. The access point was supposed to be welded shut. When the team reached it, they found the weld sliced clean, not with tools but with precision heat, like a laser cut from the inside. Outside, the desert stretched silent and endless. Only tire tracks, faint, fresh, led away into the darkness. By dawn, federal marshals and drones had the area on full alert. The search widened to nearby towns. Gas stations, truck stops, motels. Kane was officially listed as the first escapee from ADX Florence. The media never heard a word. The Bureau classified it top secret to avoid national panic. But Reeves knew this wasn't over. Kane didn't run without a reason. He'd built this entire game to expose something or someone. 2 nights later, she found out what. Her phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m., a private message from an encrypted address linked to the same data signature as the emails the warden had received earlier. The message contained only one line. "Check your reflection." Then, attached, a still image of herself, sitting alone in the interrogation room, staring at the envelope the chaplain had given her. The timestamp on the photo, 2:13 a.m. 1 minute earlier. Somebody or something was watching her in real time. Reeves rushed to the nearest security terminal. All internal feeds showed static again, the same glitch that had preceded Kane's escape. She rebooted the system, heart pounding. When the monitors came back online, every screen showed the same image. Kane, standing in front of a motel security camera somewhere outside Pueblo, Colorado, a faint smirk curling at the edge of his lips. He held up a newspaper with the headline clearly visible. "Warden Holloway found dead in office. Apparent suicide." Reeves froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Kane hadn't just escaped. He'd already started phase 2. And whatever that meant, the Bureau was already too late. If you've made it this far, you already know Marcus Kane wasn't just another criminal. He was a mind built for manipulation. So before we finish this, hit subscribe, because after you hear how it ends, you'll question every security system, every prison, every truth you've ever trusted. The morning after Warden Holloway's death, ADX Florence was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. The Bureau of Prisons claimed Holloway had taken his own life, an act of guilt, they called it. But Agent Dana Reeves didn't buy that for a second. Holloway wasn't the type to break. He was the type to obey. She stood inside his office, staring at the chaos left behind. Papers scattered. Coffee spilled across a stack of encrypted reports. A service pistol lying neatly on the desk. Too neat. Holloway's computer had been wiped, not by his hand, but by a remote access program that erased every file, every record of Kane's escape. The only thing left untouched was a small metal flash drive taped under the desk. Reeves plugged it into her secure tablet. It contained a single audio file, timestamped 3 hours before Holloway's death. The voice that came through the speakers wasn't his. It was Marcus Kane. "Robert," he said, calm, steady. "You've done well keeping your silence. But you know how this ends. You helped build the walls, didn't you? You made the system. You profited from it. Now it's time for the system to show you what it feels like to be on the inside." Then the sound of a single gunshot. Reeves froze. If Kane had made that call, it meant he'd been in contact with the warden, or worse, close enough to manipulate him. She sent the audio for forensic tracing, but every frequency was scrubbed clean, masked through layers of false IPs and signal loops. It was impossible to pinpoint the source. That afternoon, a second file surfaced, this time emailed directly to Reeves from the same untraceable address. Attached was a video. It opened with static. Then a dimly lit room appeared, peeling wallpaper, one flickering bulb, a single chair in the center. Marcus Kane sat there, calm as ever, wearing civilian clothes. He looked into the camera and smiled. "You're trying to understand the pattern," he said. "You think this is about escape, about freedom, but you're wrong. I never left the system. I became it." Reeves watched in disbelief as he stood, turning the camera toward the wall behind him. There, covering every inch of plaster, were photographs, documents, and maps of ADX, but not just ADX. Leavenworth, Marion, Pelican Bay, each marked with dates, access codes, and most chillingly names. Names of wardens, contractors, and private security executives. Kane continued, his voice smooth as ice. "You think prisons hold criminals? No, Agent Reeves. They manufacture them. I built a way in. A way to expose what they bury, the data, the money, the people they erase. And now I'm going to show the world what happens behind those walls." Then the screen went black. Moments later, an emergency alert lit up Reeves's phone. The Bureau's internal network had been breached. All security footage, personnel files, and confidential investigation records from ADX were being uploaded to the open web, live. The leak had already spread to multiple international servers. Reeves sprinted to the operations floor. Technicians scrambled to shut down the breach, but Kane's virus was rewriting access permissions faster than they could react. One by one, agency firewalls fell. It was like watching a domino effect in code. And then came the broadcast. Every major news network suddenly cut to the same live feed, the same one Reeves had seen minutes earlier. Kane's face filled the screen. "America calls ADX the place where the worst of the worst go to disappear," he said. "But maybe you should ask, who decides who disappears?" The leak exposed everything: secret disciplinary logs, financial kickbacks from private contractors, records of wrongful isolation. The story exploded worldwide within hours. ADX Florence, once the symbol of absolute control, was now a global scandal. But the part that haunted Reeves most came next. 2 days after the leak, security footage surfaced. Footage from a motel in Pueblo, Colorado, timestamped the same night as Holloway's death. It showed Kane walking to a black sedan. In the driver's seat was someone Reeves knew all too well: Father Joseph Heller, the chaplain who had sworn he'd never helped Kane, the man who'd claimed to fear him. The next morning, Reeves tracked Heller's credit card to a cabin just outside Denver. The FBI surrounded it quietly at dawn. Inside, they found 2 cups of coffee, a still warm fire, and a laptop running on a satellite connection. Kane's face was frozen on the screen mid-sentence, as if the video had just been paused. On the table lay a note written in neat handwriting. "Don't look for me. Look at who funded me." Behind it, a USB drive labeled evidence. When agents decrypted the files, what they found wasn't a list of accomplices. It was bank records, millions of dollars in transactions routed through private prison corporations, tech contractors, and shadow companies connected to multiple state officials. Holloway's name was there. So was Heller's. And at the very top of the chain, a single shell company registered under the alias D, Reeves Holdings LLC. Reeves felt the air leave her lungs. That was her father's name. Her father, Daniel Reeves, a retired defense contractor who had helped design early surveillance systems for federal prisons 2 decades ago. She hadn't spoken to him in years. She thought he was out of the game. And now Kane was telling her her own family had built the very system he'd used to outsmart the government. Before she could process it, a new message pinged onto her screen. Sender, unknown. Subject, final move. Inside was a single sentence. "You wanted to catch the monster, but you were born in his shadow." Then a live location pinged. The coordinates led to an empty warehouse just outside Colorado Springs. When Reeves and the tactical team arrived, the building was silent.
Dust.
Machinery. Old equipment. In the center, a chair, identical to the one from the video. And on it, a folded prison uniform with Kane's inmate number stitched on the chest. Next to it lay a phone. It rang once. She answered. A voice, calm, familiar, said, "Did you really think I escaped to run? I escaped to reveal you." Then the line went dead. The phone screen flickered. One final message appeared. Endgame complete. Reeves stood there, the desert wind cutting through the broken windows. Kane was gone. His leaks had dismantled the most secure prison network in the United States. And as investigations spread, names of high-ranking officials, contractors, and hidden accounts began surfacing everywhere. Marcus Kane had outsmarted everyone, not by breaking out of prison, but by turning the system inside out. And Agent Reeves? She'd learned the truth the hard way. Sometimes, the most dangerous inmate isn't the one behind bars, it's the one who built them. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe because the next case makes Marcus Kane look like a beginner.